So hi Lindsay,
Hi,
how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to have you on the Modern Independent. As you know, at A Team, we are trying to build the first professional network of some of the most highly skilled product builders across product management, design, engineering, data science that assemble as on-demand remote expert tech teams. And a big piece of what we're looking to do is to help establish the category that you're a part of those the people who like to pursue their craft with autonomy. So it's wonderful to have you. You know, I typically start those conversations by asking, "What is your craft?" And I think in your case, you have quite an interesting answer to that. So what would you answer to that question? What is your
I'm
craft?
an iOS developer and an actress. That's how I'd answer. And I used to
Okay,
do
wonderful.
modeling too.
So modeling, acting, and developing iOS apps.
Yes.
Is there knowledge transfer between acting, modeling, and building apps? They
Um,
seem far apart, but maybe they're closer than we think,
well, I think with
right?
I think that technology alone isn't as useful as technology combined with other interests and other things. So I think it's always possible to take my knowledge from other areas and combine it with technology in order to make things more efficient in the different careers. Like right now, I'm working on an app that draws from a lot of um, the modeling world. I'm doing that for a client through A Team, and I've done apps on my own that have to do with acting. For example, I have an app called Scene Partner Pro that helps with self-tape auditions. Kind of like since during the pandemic, it's become so much more common to do self-tape as opposed to going into audition rooms.
Hmm. Is there a part? So also very interesting to see that you're building. It seems that you're building products that are from your own world and perhaps coming from personal frustrations or needs that you see.
This case, yes, and when it comes to my own apps, yes, because obviously um, it makes sense to make apps that I'd want to use or that I need. But when it comes to client work, I've worked for all sorts of clients. Though I tend to still like things to look probably fashionable in a way and beautiful and nicely designed. So I think probably some of my experience seeing art in that way, fashion-wise, has helped me with the way that I develop all sorts of apps.
Also, are you saying that there's some artistic value that you're developing throughout your different careers that then apply to the way that you build technology?
Yeah, I think so. But I've definitely gotten better at design as I've gone on with client work. I've been in so I majored in computer science and theater a while ago, and then towards the when I started phasing out of my modeling career, um, I started to do iOS development for clients in order to pay for my life and my acting career that I was starting in LA. I'd always done acting and modeling. Obviously, I was a theater major, but I was so busy with modeling for some time where I was on a plane like 3 times a week. I was going to castings all the time, and I was living in different countries. I lived in New York, and I lived in London, I lived in Paris, I lived in Berlin. Um, for maybe 6 months at a time, several times. And when I decided that I wasn't as into modeling anymore, and I ended up actually moving out to LA to help produce a technology show that never ended up panning out. I realized that I loved it here and that it was easier to form an acting career over here. And in order to help me finance that, that's when I started doing client work, where I've been able to work from home, mostly remotely from home. And yeah, just have that flexibility and that autonomy.
So you build apps sometimes because you just come up with them or because you're working with clients that want to build something.
Yeah, for example, my last contract was 2 years long. It ended last November, so a year ago. And then I used that time afterwards to not take on other contracts and to start on my own apps. So I actually built 2 apps of my own that are in the store over the past year. And yeah, now I'm on contract work again.
So you talk about building apps in order to finance your acting career,
Yeah.
which makes sense. Sounds like this thing could actually quite scale in both ways.
Yeah, that would be nice.
But yeah. But from the feedback that I'm hearing from the A team that you're on, building in the beauty space actually with a pretty amazing app coming up, like the team loves working with you. Like you're 3 people, a product manager. You're taking on all the coding of the app. And you have a backend engineer working with you, like you work really, really well in team. And I'm just wondering how does it resonate with you when you do those type of projects? How is it to work on teams? And I'm just really fascinated by the way that you had a career that was very independent across
all the time.
categories.
Yeah.
But you still seem to be doing really, really well on teams. So how's that experience, and what does it feel for you?
Okay, no, okay, the other work that I've done, there's probably just as much teamwork involved. Just like with working on the A team, I'm still independent. I don't have a set schedule, and yeah, I have to communicate every so often, through video calls, and more often over texting and stuff. But when it came to modeling and acting, I've to communicate with people all the time. And with acting, obviously, I have to interface with people on, in character too. So it's a very social thing when it comes to actually performing and meeting people and auditioning and all that. So I guess maybe the social aspects that I built, the way that I've learned to interact with all sorts of people from my other careers, probably has helped me out in some ways when it comes to communicating with clients and when it comes to communicating with team members now that I'm a developer. It is different though, different people definitely when it comes to development.
Maybe that's your strength, being able to communicate with different people, empathize with them, understand them, being efficient with them right away.
Yeah.
As you jump on the A team, you had people that right away it seems you were super effective in working together.
Yeah, no, and actually, one thing that I was glad to see with this A team is that the other team members seem to have those qualities too. Like Joel is very easy to talk to, great communicator, very empathetic and nice and very smart and all that. And Martin's really great at like organizing and communicating too, the things that he thinks and feels, and he has a lot of thoughts about things that I wouldn't necessarily think about. I think a lot of high-end developers, in addition to being really good at their jobs, they're also better at communication than other developers that maybe aren't as quote unquote higher end. And I think that's why people are probably drawn to companies like A Team, not just for the development, but also for the fact that it's easier maybe to communicate across the board. I think that a lot of programmers are just more comfortable interfacing with a computer than they are with people sometimes. And I think programming probably draws in a lot of socially uncomfortable types, because it's just a way to have a job and be effective and do great work while still keeping other people at arm's length, which isn't a bad thing at all. Like I used to be very, 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 very shy, and definitely modeling helped me.
There are people who have great skills, and they have great jobs and kind of cruise in their job, but a lot of the A-teamers turn out they have this additional thing, which is adaptability.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with empathy and communication, each in their own style. Some people are more introverted, some people are more extroverted, but they know how to adapt to new people, new environment, new tech stacks, like new ways of working, new way of managing. They've done remote way before it was cool
exactly.
or forced. And basically when they get deployed, they right away just, okay, I know how to communicate with people, I understand their communication style very quickly, I know how to interface and to manage myself in those new environments, to find a safe ground very quickly, or productive ground very quickly. It's something I actually did not necessarily expect. Like at first I thought, we want on A-Team the best people, and I thought, people that would be like the top engineers or product managers, designers from the tech giants. But now I realize actually we want the people who want more than this, who are able to go to different industries, who are able to navigate their career in maybe less typical ways, take risk on themselves, certainly as you did. So that's a very interesting insight, and I think we're both we've discovered that as well.
And yeah, when it comes to remote work, I for the past several years I've worked with people who are obviously great at doing that and who are used to it. And it's kind of funny, like, not funny, it was unexpected to me the way that when people this year especially started doing more remote work, they were realizing certain things that I've dealt with for so long, and they had to go through the process of learning how to deal with working remotely. And I think for me, it's always been pretty easy to communicate. It's almost been easier for me to work from home than to go into an office where I feel distracted, where I have to work for a certain during like 9 to 5, as opposed to being able to pop out for an acting class or an audition throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, tell me how you do 100 hours on a new team you just deployed on while doing acting. Auditions. Yeah, I've had a lot of auditions lately, which I'm grateful for. And I hire an acting coach, and so we do this remotely too, where I just prop them up. I put up my background and set up the lights, and we work the auditions until they're good enough to submit. But I also have acting classes. I do at least 4 hours a week of acting classes. I don't know how actually, like, but the thing is, I like working. So I do put in 7 days a week of work, at least. I don't take any days off. So I think that is probably part of it. It doesn't feel like that. Some days I'm not doing that many hours, and some other days I just get so roped into things that I keep going and going and going. What keeps pulling you in? Like, you're in front of the computer, you've been coding, maybe you context switch a few times to do some classes and so forth.
Yeah.
Like, what keeps you going? What compels you?
Maybe there's some excitement to see the product develop and become what it's supposed to be. And, just especially the designs of this app are really beautiful. I love beautifully designed apps, and I like to make them come to life in ways that aren't exactly on the page, like when it comes to animations and interactions. I think it's like putting the pieces of a puzzle together, and maybe I'm excited to see the end result.
You kind of breathe life into this design through your coding. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us the backstory for Lindsay. So what came first? Was it the theater stuff? Was it modeling stuff? Was it the coding stuff?
Definitely acting came first. I was interested in performing since I was very young. I knew I wanted to act, and I went to Amherst College, which it's in Massachusetts, and it had an open curriculum, so that there weren't any requirements. And also in high school, I'd probably done so many college courses too, like the AP courses that let me go past certain courses in college, because I kind of did them already in high school. So I had a lot of time in my schedule to explore different things. At first I thought I'd do theater and economics, but economics ended up being kind of boring for me. And then I thought I'd do physics and theater, and I couldn't get into the physics course that semester. And then I found my way into computer science, and I loved it, and I realized that I'd actually done programming before when I was much younger. When I was about 12.
You forgot about it?
Yeah, because I didn't realize I was programming at the time at all.
What did you do? What were you doing?
I had my TI-89 graphing calculator, and I would read through the book of documentation and make games, coding games on my calculator, and I didn't know that was...
Wasn't it assembly?
No, it's called TI Basic. It's like a TI specific.
So you would code on your computer, on your calculator.
Yeah, but I would make
How
games.
old were you then?
It was middle school. So I'd say 12 or younger even. But I saw that, like, I looked at this documentation and I just was like, okay, what is this? And how can I make something fun with it? Because I saw kids passing around games and I'm like, oh, I want to make my own games. And still, no one really explained to me what computer science was at all. Like, I mean, I guess I could have Googled it or something, but.
What do you mean no one explained to you?
I didn't know what it
family,
was.
Your friends, like.
No, when I decided to take a computer science course, I didn't
even
know what
then
I
at
was.
school, they
Yeah, I was like, what is
okay.
this? Okay, let me just take it, see what happens. And then I'm like, oh, I love this.
Oh my god. What made you love it?
What?
What made you love it?
Oh.
What made you feel like you loved it?
You know what? I think sometimes if you're like, you realize you're good at something too, then you like it more. But I liked it for the same reasons I liked it as a kid. Like I remember we made a Monopoly game as the final class project, and I went so far beyond the actual requirements.
So it was not the compiler class. That was something.
No, that was later on. I had a lot of classes before the compilers. Yeah.
So you realized you loved computer science. You were taught programming during during those classes?
Yeah. So I think we started with maybe Java and then moved to C++. But then we also did lower level languages like MIPS, which was like a lower level languages that we use with robotics.
Yeah, for embedded.
Yeah, and I had data structures courses, algorithms, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, teaching MIPS is a bit of torture.
You know what?
Well, Java and C++.
Well, that wasn't the problem. I mean, anything programming related, I was okay with, but I did have trouble in that course with. I don't like doing, hooking up the logic gates and circuit boards. I was never into that. I'm kind of curious. If I tried that now, would I be more into it? But I never really liked that as much as I liked programming. So I never really liked hardware.
Piece?
Yeah.
The electronics? Oh, yeah. So you were like software only, but you liked the software.
But I had to do
yeah.
I had to do a couple of hardware courses, but I was not a fan of the hardware courses, to be honest.
Yeah. So, all right. So you do the computer science, you do the theater classes, you graduate, and then what happens?
I moved back in with my family in New Jersey, and we were 30 minutes outside of New York, so I started looking up auditions, and bigger modeling agency found my pictures online. Up to that point, I had considered modeling, and I actually met with all the agencies in New York, and I was rejected by everyone, like so many times. And then my first agency found my pictures online, and so they called me in and they signed me. And because they had an acting department too, I figured, okay, that this could be a good match. I could have better acting representation and I could have modeling representation. Yeah.
And then your modeling career took off, right?
Yeah, so it took off before an acting career. And maybe a year and a half in, I was called into the offices of Calvin Klein like late at night. They met with me a few times and I couldn't really tell what they were thinking, but they called me in maybe at 11 p.m. or like 10 p.m., something like that. And I had to walk for them. I had to meet the head designer, and then they decided that they wanted to make me the first African American with an exclusive contract for Calvin Klein.
Wow.
So I ended up.
Also, can't believe that you would have been the first, but that's...
Yeah, I know.
That is-
I know. I was like, what's going on here? This is a little weird.
Like,
But
what
then,
reminded you of this?
yeah, but as time went
I've done this
on,
a long time ago.
yeah, but as time went on, I realized that this was actually very common. I walked for
do you
Prod. There weren't that many Black people in shows, a lot of shows before me. I think for Prada, I was like the third Black person they ever worked with, and I don't know how long they've been around. Probably, yeah.
That was like what, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, well, like 10 years ago.
It's pretty recent.
Yeah.
My God, unbelievable.
Yeah, so there's a
Yeah,
lot
the world
of
sucks sometimes.
that. Yeah, it was a little weird. But then there was a point where I was the Black girl they were hiring for all these jobs. I did, obviously Prada, Gucci, Calvin Klein, Louis Vuitton. I was shooting for for W magazine and some Vogue magazines too, and doing campaigns, DKNY, like a bunch of stuff. And yeah, like doing all the shows for a lot of the designers. But then because they'd only have one black girl in the show, as soon as they found a new black girl, I was like, okay, sorry. I remember there was one show I did before, and the casting director let me know, she's like, sorry, we already have a black girl for the show. And she was trying to be nice.
No.
Yeah, she said that. And she was trying to be nice about it, like she's telling me the truth. Like, I liked her, actually.
But she was not ashamed about it.
I mean, I think she,
Like
because actually, all right, to be honest, she was kind of a person of color too. So I think, you know, she probably thought it was unfortunate too, the way that things had to be. Like, she was working for a designer. This is the way the industry was. So I think that she probably didn't like the way things were either.
And how is it in tech? Like that issue?
There
gets a lot of coverage, but how is it in real life?
Yeah, there are some things that are very difficult about, like, I mean, there are only 3% of programmers are black women, for example, and so a lot of times people don't believe that I'm a real programmer. Like,
What do you mean don't believe you're a real programmer?
They think that I'm just like faking it, or that I've been accused of all sorts of things. Like I had a client once even, and I did the app really well and really quickly, like I usually do, and it looked really good. Like, I took the design elements and I made them look really good. And so one of the other engineers, like the back-end engineer, told the boss that he thinks that I used a wrapper to make the app, which is like obviously not true. You could see it in Xcode. I have the code, I have the interface. You could look at everything and realize that I wrote it from scratch. But just like, you know, it's just, you wonder if I were more of the traditional programmer type, that maybe they wouldn't have these questions. I mean, that's something to wonder. Or like, I went to this, I went to this party in Santa Monica, California once at a friend's house, and he's very involved in the developer community. So I walked in and I hear these guys talking about programming, and I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? And they just said, oh, you wouldn't be interested. So I just was like, okay. And, you know, it's just like, I mean, yeah, there have been lots of times where if someone asks me what I do and I mention that I do programming, they'll just kind of be like, whoa. And I know I don't know if it's a compliment or not, but they'll be like, whoa, that's like, you know, they'll just be very surprised, and they're like, oh wow, that's so cool, like some guys or something, you know, where it's like, okay, this is like, you know, does it really need this sort of reaction?
Yeah, well, there's the part certainly where you defy preconceptions and chart a better path for others, which is amazing, and the part that is just very saddening, that these biases go that deep, especially in tech, where we're all about building a new world, a better world. What do we do about this? How do we get this better?
I think it's just about, honestly, I think it's a lot about representation. So I know that me being a part of this is, I've heard from some young girl that said it's inspired them to push on with programming too, because a lot of times, even in programming classes in college, you know, a lot of the guys can make the girls feel like out of place. And I think also it's about exposure, because I didn't know what programming was, and I hear that some young men know about it sooner than some young women. So it like, I mean, luckily I caught on to my first computer science course very quickly, but if I didn't, and if I needed that extra time because I wasn't afforded the same opportunity to learn at a younger age as other people were, then I think, you know, that it's better for classmates to be supportive than not. And yeah, like I said, a lot of programmers just don't know how to interface with people as well as they do with computers. And I think that can be very off-putting for some women and girls in classes and in the workplace.
Wow, we do have a lot of work to do on this. Exposure, creating, and trying to remove and prevent biases, giving opportunity in a way that brings the brains that we need to actually do the right things. But it still takes a leap of faith like it still takes a lot for people to take a leap of faith, like you do on yourself.
Yeah, I know.
In your career.
I'm probably reckless with it to a point, but I'm lucky that everything's panned out, because I think there have been lots of times where, for example, my mother would, my parents have always supported me in doing anything I want, but I think they probably think that I'm a little out there for not following any traditional path and getting a proper job in an office where I'm making, where I have more stability and I don't have to pay for my own health insurance and that sort of thing. But
yeah, I hear you. My parents are just the same. I don't think they really understand what I've been doing for the past few startups that I've built. But yeah, they're like, yeah.
But I'm just fortunate that it's panned out each time. But even if it
what
hadn't,
advice would you get? Sorry, I cut you off. Even if it hadn't, sorry.
If it hadn't, well, for anything that hasn't panned out for me, like where it hasn't seemed like it's panned out for me right away, I'm always willing to adapt in order to make either my original dream come true, or a dream come true as I discover more about what my skill set is and what my interests are, and I try to obtain a certain goal.
Nice jump.
Yeah, they like playing, they're cute together, my dog and my cat. Anyway, so I've had to adapt a lot. For example, with acting, it wasn't taking off yet. I had to make money, and I realized that there were aspects of modeling also that let me transform into characters, and that it would be a way to further myself in entertainment, especially because of the acting modeling connection. And when I started to realize certain things about modeling I didn't like, and actually this would happen, I went overseas to live in Berlin. Well, they sent me overseas, my agency in New York sent me overseas to live in Paris and then Berlin for about a year total. And when I came back, I found out they dropped me while I was away. So yeah, so then I'm like,
my God.
I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do, because when I was overseas, I was also doing learning specifically iOS development because I got my first iPhone, and I decided, okay, let me see how this particular technology works. And so when I got back and they let me go, I'm like, okay, let me double down on this and actually focus more on iOS development.
So when the agencies drop you behind your back,
yeah, that was
what you told yourself is, oh, the iPhone just came out, let me start building apps on it?
I'd been working on it for like the past year, just out of curiosity. But then, yeah, when they dropped me, I'm like, okay, now I really need to work on this. And I did find another modeling agency, but I knew not to trust anyone. So I was like, okay, I can trust myself at least. Let me just work on this more. And even towards the end of the year, and no one would hire me like for iOS development, even though I developed my own apps and I had my computer science degree and I had something to show for it. By that point, I actually hopped on Stack Overflow and I just started answering lots and lots and lots of questions, like all day, every day, until I got to be the #1 best developer answering questions that month. Yeah, so then I was able to take a screenshot, and then I sent it to people who kind of ignored me before about certain opportunities. And after that, I joined a tutorial team that was really probably the biggest iOS tutorial team. And I was able to get jobs through them. And at first I wasn't paid very much, so I just did a good job with those apps. And then with that experience and my Stack Overflow points and my tutorials, then I was able to get clients that paid more and more and more. So that's where I am at today.
And now you're crushing it. And all this started because they dumped you behind your back.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable. Yeah, you were able to turn the page right away and figure out how to rely on yourself.
Yeah, I was. Amazing. And also, I've also not needed to drop my dream of acting too. Right. This is another way I've learned, okay, this is how this was the dream from the beginning, where I wanted to act. So I never had to drop that dream. I just had to find different ways to achieve it. And yeah, I love programming, and one day it would be nice if I could, what I really want is I want to make my money from acting and then be able to funnel it into the technology that I build, so I can build whatever I want and and do acting.
That's an amazing dream.
Yeah, that's the reverse of what I'm doing now. But yeah. I would like that, just because it's fun to have the freedom to build your own things. I like doing client work, obviously, and I'm fortunate that I'm able to do it, but it would be nice to be able to build all my own stuff using whatever resources I have.
I completely hear you on that. This is so unbelievably inspiring. The ability to adapt, the fact that you don't have to give up on any of your dreams. You can run things in parallel. You don't have to think as a unilateral career. You can grow even within necessity, while answering necessity,
Yeah.
and have those long-term vision on how you want your life to pan out, and take those leap of faith to execute on it. It's just unbelievably inspiring. Did you have other, I think you've given us the framework that's just going to be amazing for so many of the community and the people watching this, but is there anything else you would share to people who, especially this year, I think a lot of people started to give a moment to listen to their dreams a little bit more.
Yeah. And to each other more
and,
too.
And right, maybe because they were stuck at home. But there is, I see that this is a big job disruption in the job marketplace throughout this year, and people are thinking, I've been stuck at that job, and I'm not sure if my values align with that job really. I'd like to choose the things that I work on, but can I really do it? And you show that you can. Is there anything else you'd share others in that situation?
Well, this year also, I think people realize that the traditional ideas of job stability aren't necessarily as stable as they used to maybe be. So
yeah,
I think it's important for everyone to be adaptable, and if you're able to be adaptable in a way that also allows for you to have the possibility of achieving the things that you've always wanted to achieve, then it's good to plan your work life in those ways. Because it's like you can't, the 9 to 5, going into the office, coming home, and making sure you have the benefits and everything, maybe things are changing a bit. And the fact that technology allows us to work remotely, and the fact that there's so many more technology jobs that are coming down the pipeline and that are around now that probably are unfilled, maybe because there aren't as many programmers as are needed. I think that gives people like clients and companies more incentive to work in non-traditional ways and potentially hire people in ways that are more in line with their own desires. I think technology is giving the power to the people a little bit in that way, maybe.
Very much so. I
could not agree more.
I think you said something. I think something you said on our last call kind of triggered my mind in that way to start thinking that way. So thank you for that thought.
Thank you. This is our mission. That's what we get up in the morning, and we see that the magic that happens when the people that actually want to work, do the work that matters to them with the people they like on their own terms. There's magic. They do way more than the hours. It becomes like when you connect talented people with their passion and with good people with the ability to learn, it's just something unlocks there. And almost it's unbelievable to me that it's now that so very few people today in the world can afford to actually choose, and that's unbelievable to me. It's either the incredibly wealthy or the crazy risk takers and entrepreneurs, but very few. But we all want that, and to me, your story inspires me and reminds me that at the end of the day, things that look stable may not be as stable as you thought, like you said. And that you can rely on, and you should think about how you rely on yourself, how you build a plan. In a way, your story makes me think not as just as an individual, but it feels almost like a company, like you're managing yourself as a company with a long-term plan, with taking certain risks, opening new verticals to get diversified. It's just so thoughtful, strategic, smart, and full of growth and inspiration.
I think it's all.
Thank you for sharing that.
I think it's a lot about just having to depend on myself, probably most, not all my life in some way or another. I've just had to think about, okay, how can I survive and how can I thrive, hopefully. But survival's, that's a pretty big, that's a pretty good incentive to achieve.
That's amazing.
And you're doing it. Lindsay, this has been incredibly inspiring.
That was a good call.
I cannot wait to keep talking anyway, not just for you, the A team you're running and but also on some of the efforts that you and I started discussing on this call and the past one, to build, you know, a professional network that we will be proud to see the level of diversity and inclusion that we need to see.
I mean, like, and I'm not just saying this, but the A team is obviously special in certain ways that a lot of the other platforms aren't. There's incentive on the other platforms to drive down your rates, undervalue yourself in order to compete with maybe other people who aren't as skillful as you, but who are still battling for the same jobs. I think a lot of the clients also don't know how to assess who's great at what they do and who's not. But I think by maintaining quality and of both clients and the workers, I think it's something that hasn't been done properly before. And so it's nice that there is a platform out there that is making sure to maintain those standards.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And you're right. I think the 10x type engineer, product manager, designers has exponential results, and it ends up being actually much cheaper than you would get.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's what people don't understand. Also, is that like it's no good if someone doesn't do a good job on your product.
Yeah, like maybe it's that intersection that you found between modeling, acting, and computer science, which is like when we build an app, when we build a product, when we solve even a data science issue, it's science and art.
Yeah.
And it's not just deterministic, like you just produce lines of code.
Yeah,
lines
exactly.
of code and coding, it's a commodity, but here we're builders.
Yeah.
This is very cool, and hopefully that will maintain the quality, but also keep increasing diversity and the types of voices that are represented in the network, so that the next wave of technology, the next things that are being built and shipped by companies all over the world, have that wealth of backgrounds and perspective, and frankly, when we think about teams. Right, like teams at the core, it's about diversity of skills, disciplines, but also approaches, backgrounds, ways of looking at the world, and we gotta do our job in making that happen more and more and going wider.
And especially what you just said about the diversity of perspective and just the facts that technology can be so much richer if we include all sorts of perspectives, all sorts of people from all sorts of diverse backgrounds. I think we have barely touched into the surface or through the surface in order to see what can be accomplished, because we haven't had enough people included in the conversation yet.
I couldn't agree more. Let's make it happen, Lindsay. You're a phenomenal human being. I'm glad you're on this earth. We're making things happen. We're going to change the status quo. Absolutely. I mean, we get to shape this professional network from the ground up in 2020. We don't have to repeat the mistakes of the past professional networks and companies have done before in tech.
Yeah.
And we're gonna make it a new day. Lindsay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been the best conversation for me of the day, of the week, maybe longer. I hope it will be for whoever is listening.
Yeah, no, it's
and
great.
Thank you for inspiring all of us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
And talk again very soon.
Yeah, bye.